Shut up. You're just a high school grad who only knows how to shake her hips at men. Don't talk to me like we're equals. Say whatever you want, but the fact remains that you seduced that guy from the academy. You were probably trying to lure in a teenage boyfriend by charming your students, but then you realized no one takes an older woman seriously, so you switched to a younger teacher instead. That's what really happened, isn't it? I know exactly how women like you think. My wife discovered evidence that the president, Mr. Harris, had been cooking the books, and she submitted it to the company's internal whistleblowing office. Right after that, she received a sudden reassignment order to the head office, even though she had always worked at a branch office. She left for her first day at the head office in high spirits, but came home soon after crying. When I asked her what had happened, she told me that she had been suddenly summoned to the president's office, where she was ordered to wear a name tag that said "Ugly High School Grad." On top of that, Mr. Harris insulted her, saying, "You're the worst kind of woman," using your body and crocodile tears to climb the ladder, and even tried to touch her, forcing her to flee in tears. Furious, I contacted Mr. Harris and told him, "I'll make sure you're finished in society," and swore to make him pay for what he had done. My name is Ryan. I'm a teacher at a private academy. I teach social studies. I just turned 27 this year, and this is only my second year as a teacher, so I don't have much experience yet. In Japan, to become a school teacher, you must complete a teacher training program at a university or junior college and pass the teacher's certification exam. In my case, I completed the training program while I was still in college and passed the exam right after graduating. So, by the time I was 23, I had already met all the requirements to become a teacher. However, I didn't start teaching until I was 26. For 3 years after graduation, I worked as a sales representative at a private company. I believed that gaining experience in the private sector would help me stay connected with everyday society and avoid becoming out of touch as a teacher. That's why I deliberately chose not to become a teacher right after graduation and decided to work in the private sector first. Whenever I start something, I always make sure to prepare thoroughly in advance. This way of thinking and living was deeply influenced by a mentor I met when I was a student. I was born into an ordinary family, but when I was in middle school, my father, who was a company employee, experienced the bankruptcy of the small construction firm he worked for. My father worked for a small construction company, and although his salary was below the national average, my mother also worked part-time, so our family was able to live a modest but decent life without any real luxuries. However, after my father suddenly lost his job, we fell into financial hardship. He quickly found new work, but at his age, it was difficult to get hired as a full-time employee, and he ended up switching between short-term contract and temp jobs. His new wages were lower than before, so my mother increased her working hours, but even so, our total household income remained low. I had been a good student since elementary school, and I decided early on that I wanted to go to college. I had also begun preparing for the entrance exams to attend a competitive high school. My parents worked hard, hoping to increase their income over the next few years, and as planned, I took the entrance exam and was accepted to a top-level school. I continued to earn top grades in high school, but our financial situation didn't improve much. Since I attended a public high school, the tuition wasn't too expensive, but it was clear that college would cost a significantly larger amount. Even in my second year of high school, I was still maintaining my grades, but both my father and mother remained stuck in low-paying jobs. My parents never said anything directly, but from their expressions and behavior, I realized how tough things were, and I began to think about giving up on college and entering the workforce. So I went to talk to my homeroom teacher, Mr. Yates, a man in his late 40s, and told him about my family's situation. I said I wanted to give up on college and start looking for a job. Mr. Yates was shocked by my sudden change in plans, especially since I had been maintaining top grades without attending any prep school. He told me, "It's too early to give up." I'm not saying this because I don't want to go to college. My parents might be willing to go into debt for me, but I just can't put any more strain on them. They're already exhausted. When I said that, Mr. Yates responded, "Let me see if there's anything I can do on my end," and asked me to hold off on making a final decision for just a little while. Later on, Mr. Yates called me in and said, "There are several universities that offer scholarship programs," as he handed me brochures for multiple schools. "If you meet the requirements, these universities will waive your tuition. Some even offer scholarships that don't need to be paid back." Aren't the requirements pretty tough? Of course, it's not open to just anyone. You need to prove that your household income is low and also rank among the top few in the entrance exam. It won't be easy, but Ryan, I think you have a real shot at making it. Mr. Yates encouraged me with those words and also spoke with my parents about it. Eventually, I decided to apply to a university and aim for one of their scholarship slots. I already had enough ability to pass the entrance exam, but to earn a scholarship, I had to be among the top few candidates. That meant I had to push myself even harder. I studied desperately all the way to the exam, improved my scores in the subjects I was weak in, and finally earned the scholarship qualification at a university. When the acceptance letter arrived at school, I quietly celebrated with a fist pump, filled with joy. Mr. Yates celebrated my success as if it were his own. Thanks to him, I was able to attend college without placing a burden on my parents. Even when my parents and I expressed our gratitude, saying, "It's thanks to Mr. Yates' heartfelt advice and support," he simply looked bashful and never once acted like we owed him anything as he saw me off from school. Naturally, I came to respect and admire Mr. Yates deeply. I wanted to become the kind of adult who could support students in the way he had. That's why I decided to become a teacher and enrolled in the teacher training program at university. When I told Mr. Yates about my decision, he was genuinely touched and said, "If seeing me inspired that decision in you, then nothing could make me prouder as a teacher." Actually, I worked for a private company for a few years after graduating from college. Later, I became a teacher by chance. But I think that having real-world experience helped me become a more balanced educator. I recommend that you also spend some time in the outside world before becoming a teacher. I followed the advice of my mentor and chose to work in the private sector for 3 years. Then, at the age of 26, I finally became a teacher, something I had long aspired to do. Many high schools were hiring at the time, and among them was the affiliated high school of a university where I had studied. I wanted to repay a university for giving me the opportunity through the scholarship program, so I applied for the teaching position at its affiliated high school. After passing the hiring exam, I began working as a social studies teacher at the very school connected to my alma mater. At 27, I was still considered quite young for a teacher, and I wasn't too far removed from my students in terms of perspective. I made it a point to speak with my students on equal footing, never building walls between us, and perhaps because of that, they gradually began to trust me more. Lately, I had been receiving more personal consultations from them. Each time a student came to me with a concern, I was reminded of the time I once considered giving up on college and spoke with Mr. Yates. No matter how small the issue seemed, I always took it seriously. In this way, I had been leading a busy yet very fulfilling life as a teacher. There was actually another big reason why I felt so emotionally content these days. I had recently gotten married. My wife, Mary, is the same age as me, and we met at A Academy. After graduating from high school, Mary went to work for an IT company called B Techno. Shortly after I became a teacher, Mary was dispatched to our school as a special instructor to support our IT skill development program. Technology, especially in the internet space, evolves quickly, and the environment surrounding it changes every day. If teachers deliver clumsy lessons with just handouts, students will find the material outdated and boring, would be a waste of their time. That's why our academy had started inviting technical experts from private companies to deliver lectures with cutting-edge content. These lessons were well received by both students and their parents. Incidentally, Mr. Harris of B Techno was related to Chairman Davis of A Academy, which is why B Techno was selected to dispatch instructors. Some people had voiced concerns about hiring instructors from a company connected to the chairman. But since the lecturers actually sent were competent and popular with students, it wasn't seen as a serious problem, at least for now. I was personally interested in this initiative of utilizing private sector talent, so I asked Chairman Mr. Davis if I could observe some of the classes. Mary used popular games among young people as the basis for her lessons, explaining the underlying technologies in an easy-to-understand way. She had a natural gift for teaching. She would occasionally go off topic just enough to keep students engaged. Before I knew it, I found myself genuinely looking forward to her classes. After one class, when we had a little time before she returned to her company, I praised her lesson and said, "I wish I could take this class as a student every time." She seemed very happy to hear that. Being the same age and having common interests, Mary and I naturally began chatting more and more whenever we saw each other. We exchanged contact information, and it didn't take long for us to start dating officially. After nearly a year of getting to know each other, we confirmed our feelings and got married. Everyone around us offered their congratulations, but since I was a teacher and Mary was a special instructor, our marriage did raise one small issue. Just before our wedding, Mr. Harris of B Techno, Mary's employer, requested a meeting with me. Mr. Harris was in his early 50s, with a touch of gray in his hair and narrow eyes. "Congratulations on your marriage. I hear you met through one of our company's dispatched employees." "Yes, thank you very much. It's wonderful that two young people are getting married. However, there is one thing we need to consider. Now that the two of you are married and both standing in front of students, people are bound to take an interest." "Well, that's probably unavoidable. These days, people are quite sensitive about appearances. There have been a few parents, just a very small number, of course, who have voiced concerns about you being seen together." I completely understood what Mr. Harris was trying to say. Mary was a beautiful woman who had already drawn attention from some of the male students. Now that she had married a newly appointed teacher like me, it wasn't hard to imagine students letting their imaginations run wild, possibly to the point of disrupting their studies. It was also foreseeable that some parents would be uncomfortable with Mary continuing to work as an instructor, possibly viewing her presence as a distraction. I understand your concerns. As a teacher at this academy, I want whatever is best for the students. I knew that Mary would likely have to step down from her role as a special instructor due to our marriage, but I couldn't object to that. "I see. I truly appreciate your understanding." Mr. Harris said this and bowed his head politely. As a man myself, I can understand how young male students feel. Honestly, I don't think adults should scold boys just for being naturally curious about women. He smiled meaningfully as he said that. "Well, yes, I honestly feel the same way," I replied with a smile, but deep down, I couldn't help feeling a slight discomfort at how casually Mr. Harris had spoken about men viewing Mary as a sexual object. Still, I decided that this was just part of Mr. Harris's blunt personality. After that, we chatted for a while and parted on good terms. Aside from our conversation about Mary, Mr. Harris was actually an easy person to talk to. Of course, I maintained proper manners as a teacher dealing with the president of a company that supported our special courses. But he never acted superior, often cracking jokes and keeping things light-hearted until the end. Soon, Mary would no longer be a special instructor and would likely no longer be involved with our academy. But she hoped to continue working at B Techno. I felt that with someone as candid and straightforward as Mr. Harris at the helm, Mary would likely continue to enjoy working at her company. That evening, after wrapping up my work, I headed out into the city. Mary and I were meeting up with my former coworker, Miles, for drinks. Miles had been a colleague of mine when I was working in sales, during my time gaining experience in the private sector. Not long after I left that company to become a teacher, Miles also resigned and ended up joining B Techno. He was shocked when he found out that his former colleague and his current coworker, Mary, were getting married. "This has to be fate, so let me celebrate with you," Miles said, and arranged the get-together. He already knew Mary from the company, and since we were all the same age, the evening quickly became lively. After sharing the story of how Mary and I got together, and reminiscing about the days when Miles and I worked in sales. We updated each other on our current lives. When I told Miles that I was keeping busy at the academy, but feeling fulfilled, he suddenly grew serious and said, "I'm glad things are going well for you. I wish I had something more positive to say on my end." "What's wrong?" "Something happened at work." "Well, just between us, okay? B-Techno went through a change in leadership a little while ago, and ever since then, the atmosphere in the company has gone downhill." "You mean the new president is Mr. Harris?" I asked, picturing the face of Mr. Harris, whom I had just met earlier that day. "Yeah, the former president, Mr. Tucker, actually cared about the employees. But Mr. Harris is nothing like that. He sucks up to upper management really well, but when it comes to dealing with subordinates, he acts like a tyrant. I've got a friend in the secretarial department, and the stories I hear from her are insane. It's like something out of a movie. He treats them like servants in a medieval aristocrat's mansion." "That guy? Mr. Harris?" "I only spoke with him briefly, but he seemed pretty reasonable." "You only saw him at the academy, right?" "That's his public persona. When he's in front of outsiders, he switches to charm mode. But with the secretaries, he only speaks in commands. He goes off on them over the tiniest mistake, and just recently, two of them left the company with mental health issues. And this part's really not for public ears, but he also sexually harasses the young female staff, commenting on their bodies, asking who they're dating, even trying to touch them." "What the hell, that's disgusting." Mary couldn't help but shout in outrage. She didn't work at the main office, so she'd only seen Mr. Harris when he visited the academy and had only witnessed his polished, professional demeanor. Hearing this side of him for the first time left her both shocked and furious. I was shocked, too, and angry. But more than that, I remembered something from earlier that day, when Mr. Harris had made a comment that hinted at seeing Mary in a sexual way. Thinking that Mr. Harris's tendency to sexually harass women had briefly shown through in that moment made a lot of things that had felt off finally start to make sense. Until just hours earlier, I had felt relieved that Mary worked at a company led by someone like Mr. Harris. Now, that feeling had completely flipped into deep concern. He's a habitual abuser, harassing employees and misusing power. And get this, he takes clients to his favorite upscale spots under the guise of business entertainment, living it up on company funds. Technically, he brings business partners, so it counts as official, but he drags along people who clearly don't enjoy that kind of thing. Meanwhile, if someone on the ground needs even a pen, they have to fill out a form justifying it. No one's motivated anymore. Every department is like that now. Honestly, the company's future is looking grim. And to think I switched jobs for this. Miles, you're close with the people in the secretarial department, right? Why not encourage them to report the harassment? I know it's not really my place to say this, but if someone just leaks it on social media and it blows up, even if Mr. Harris tries to cover it up internally, public pressure could force him out." "Whoa, that's a pretty intense suggestion." "It's not intense at all. If you put yourself in the shoes of someone being sexually harassed every day, wanting to do anything about it as soon as possible is completely natural. Letting a creep like him stay in power is just wrong. He needs to be taken down now." Fueled in part by alcohol, Mary's anger showed no sign of stopping. Miles and I had to calm her down, telling her that even if something were to be done, it couldn't be without the consent of the people actually suffering under Mr. Harris. Miles said he would keep gathering information and look for a way to bring Mr. Harris's behavior to light in a careful, deliberate way. Even after we got home, Mary was still visibly unsettled. Then, suddenly, she pulled out an envelope bearing the B-Techno logo and began studying the documents inside with a serious look. "This doesn't make sense." She looked up after a while and said, "What doesn't?" "This is the spec sheet for the tablets our company is delivering to A Academy. But the specs listed in the contract are all over the place compared to the actual manufacturer's documentation." "What?" I had worked in sales before, so I was used to reading these kinds of documents. I already knew that A Academy had signed a contract to purchase 400 tablets through B-Techno for classroom use, but this was my first time seeing the actual paperwork. I went through it with her, pointing at each item, comparing the contract specs with those of the actual products. You're right. This isn't just a small discrepancy. The CPU is lower grade, the screen resolution's worse, the max data speed's lower. These aren't just downgraded versions, they're previous generation models. And the pre-installed apps are strange too. There are tons of things no class would ever use, and just those apps alone are inflating the unit price by 20%. Why would they do that? According to Miles, Mr. Harris has issues not just with how he treats people, but also with how he handles money. You don't think? The only thing that makes sense is that they're swapping in cheaper tablets and pocketing the difference through kickbacks. The unnecessary apps inflate the price on paper to make up the difference, but most of them are freebies you'd get when signing up for a basic data plan. I bet they're discounting them behind the scenes and only paying half of what's listed. How has no one noticed something this obvious? Mr. Davis and Mr. Harris are family. The decision to hire special instructors and choose educational materials is all handled behind closed doors, probably just between Mr. Harris and his close circle. Even if someone did notice, they're probably too afraid of Mr. Harris's tyranny to say anything. What are we supposed to do with this? I mean, I'm technically an outsider. If we're going to report this, we'd have to go to the police. No need to go that far just yet. BTechno still has an internal whistleblower hotline that Mr. Tucker set up when he was president. I'm going to report it there anonymously. From what Miles said earlier, there are plenty of people at the main office who are unhappy with Mr. Harris. Even if he finds out about the report, I doubt he'll be able to figure out who sent it. Mary immediately compiled the relevant materials into a file and sent them anonymously through a free email address to the internal hotline. All I could do then was hope the whistleblower office would act quickly and keep a close watch on what would happen next. Several days passed, but there was still no sign that the company had taken any action in response to Mary's anonymous report. Instead, though perhaps it was just coincidence, Mary received a reassignment order to the company's head office. Since she was no longer working as a special instructor at A Academy, she had already requested to be assigned a new position, so she took the transfer as a positive sign that her request had been granted. I was happy for Mary and celebrated with her, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling. Was it really just a coincidence that she was being transferred to the head office where Mr. Harris worked, and at this particular timing? That lingering concern turned out to be more than justified, and in a worse way than I had imagined. On the day of her transfer, Mary left home early, giving herself plenty of time to prepare for her first day at the new office. I had to use a substitute day off for the extra classes I had taught at the academy last month, so I was planning to spend the day at home. I had intended to take care of various errands during my free time, but all of those plans were suddenly thrown out the window. Just about an hour after leaving, Mary came back home. I was startled that she returned without even contacting me beforehand, even if she had been sent home early for some reason. When I saw her looking down, her eyes brimming with tears, I rushed over and helped her into a chair. Knowing how strong-willed Mary was, the fact that she had come back crying without a single word told me that something serious had happened, serious enough that I even feared she might have been the victim of a crime on her way to work. But Mary was in such a state of shock that she couldn't speak right away, so I didn't try to force anything out of her. I focused entirely on calming her down. After a while, she finally began to speak and told me what had happened. My ID badge. As she said that, Mary handed me her name badge. Her name was printed on it, but in much larger red letters. There was an insult so vile it was hard to even say aloud. Ugly high school grad. What? What is this? Mr. Harris told me to wear it. Apparently, on her first day at the head office, Harris summoned her and handed her that name tag. I had no idea what his intentions were, but that's what she said happened. My rage surged to the point of clouding my thoughts, but I forced myself to stay calm and focused. No matter his reasons, there was no justification for such behavior. Even if I was furious, I had to understand the situation clearly before reacting. So I gently asked Mary for details about what had happened in Mr. Harris's office, and what she told me was staggering. The moment she entered, Mr. Harris said, "Ah, so you're the Mary who got canned from the academy." I wasn't. Fired. As you already know, Mr. Harris, I got married to a teacher from A Academy, and that's why I was replaced, nothing more. Oh, come on. From the beginning, you just wanted to snag some lively young guy at the school, and once you found one, you quit. So why are you still hanging around this company? You should just retire and enjoy being a housewife. Why would you say something like that? I enjoyed teaching at the academy and gave it my best. I never had any kind of improper intentions. Humph. You can say whatever you want. You never even graduated from college, but you got picked as a lecturer just because you can talk smoothly, and it probably went straight to your head. Surrounded by teenage boys, a woman like you flaunting your so-called charm must have gotten plenty of attention, didn't she? Even if you're the president, that's completely inappropriate. Please take that back. Shut up. You're just a high school grad who knows nothing but how to shake your hips at men. Don't talk to me like we're equals. Say whatever you want, but the fact remains you bagged a guy at the academy, didn't you? You were probably trying to seduce a teenage student and make him your boyfriend. But when you realized no one takes an older woman seriously, you went for a young teacher instead. That's how it went, right? I know exactly how women like you think. That's horrible. As Mary began to cry from the verbal abuse, Mr. Harris sneered. See? When your charm doesn't work, you turn on the tears. That's exactly why I can't stand stupid women like you. These days, you all pick up some half-baked ideas about women's rights and try to use them to manipulate men. You probably think you can just cry and win by calling it sexual harassment. But I'm not one of those spineless seats. I see through every trick a dumb high school grad like you tries to pull. It was lucky the academy got rid of you before you could seduce any decent male students. If you'd caused a scandal, it would have been on me. But now that you're here at the head office, your usual tactics, your flirtation and crocodile tears, won't work anymore. There's nothing good waiting for you here, so if you've got any sense left, you'd quit now while you still can. Even as Mary broke down completely and covered her face in tears, Mr. Harris showed no sign of backing off. I told you that kind of act doesn't work on me. If you're really that determined to stick around in this company, then start by wearing this name tag and recognizing your place. And, let's see, if you're willing to do what I say, maybe I'll make things a little easier for you. As Mary looked up in shock, she saw that Mr. Harris had gotten up from his seat at some point and was now standing close, openly running his lecherous eyes over her body. Overwhelmed with revulsion, Mary instinctively pushed Mr. Harris away and fled the office, then the building. I say apparently because she was so shaken that her memory of what happened afterward was hazy at best. Before she knew it, she was standing in front of our home. Desperate to get away from Mr. Harris, she had somehow made it all the way back without knowing how. Whether she took a train or taxi, she couldn't remember. Her body had simply led her to safety. After managing to get the whole story out, Mary was overwhelmed by a renewed wave of disgust. She clung to me, sobbing uncontrollably, unable to move. I stayed by her side, holding her close, doing everything I could to comfort and reassure her. Eventually, Mary seemed to feel a little safer. Completely drained from the emotional turmoil, she finally drifted off into a quiet sleep. I gently carried her to the bedroom and laid her down to rest. Then I picked up my phone and pulled up Mr. Harris's number, the one we had exchanged during our previous meeting. "Ryan, is it? What can I do for you?" "I think you already know." "Ah, so you're the husband of that woman, Mary, who abandoned her post and left work early today. I suppose she's filled your head with all sorts of nonsense, but it's all lies. I won't entertain accusations based on the words of an employee who walked out on her duties." "I see. So you were expecting this call. That means everything you did to Mary was premeditated." "I'm sorry, but I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm busy, so if you'll excuse me. Allow me to relieve you of that busy schedule." "Huh! You won't be president much longer. You're about to have a lot of free time on your hands. So this is what I get from a man who let some high school educated tramp seduce him into marriage? Pathetic. And how exactly do you plan to remove me from my position? I'm going to bring you down right now. Ha, this is rich. If you're coming here in person, I'll make time for you. Let's see what you've got. After Mr. Harris hung up on me, I didn't bother calling back. Instead, I checked on Mary once more to make sure she was still asleep, then quietly left the house. When I gave my name at the front desk of B Techno's headquarters, I was immediately shown to the president's office. It seemed Mr. Harris had really told reception to let me in if I showed up, which meant one thing: he was absolutely confident that no matter what I said or did, I couldn't touch him. He was sitting there, certain of his power, waiting to mock me from his throne of authority. We'll see if things go the way you think. Muttering that under my breath, I flung the door open and stepped inside. Mr. Harris greeted me with a smug smile. Well, well, you actually showed up. What a touching love story if you ignore the fact that the mighty husband here is being led around by a high school Grad bimbo. Stop calling her that. Mary is my wife, not someone beneath me. Oh, spare me. Another spineless modern man clinging to your sweet little dream of gender equality. It's men like you who've let women get uppity in the first place. Not that you'd ever understand real power unlike me. You call that a philosophy? That's nothing but the nonsense of a deluded tyrant. No, not even a tyrant. You're just a pitiful excuse for an adult who never grew up. Why, you little getting cocky, are we? Maybe I should call the police and report you for trespassing. One police report, and your little teaching career is finished. And your precious wife? I'll fire her. Let's see how you both enjoy living on the streets. No, you're the one who's finished. I said that and slammed a stack of copied tablet contract documents onto his desk. Mr. Harris glanced at the papers, and for the first time, the smug look vanished from his face. What the hell is this? How did you get this? That damn woman gave it to you, didn't she? This is a serious breach of company protocol. Even if she's your wife, sharing internal documents with an outsider is unacceptable. I'll have you both prosecuted. Do you not even know the laws regarding whistleblowing? Disclosing internal information to an outside party for the purpose of reporting organizational misconduct is not a crime. And frankly, you're the one who should be worried about this document being investigated. Don't be ridiculous. Why did you go so far with Mary? Not just the power harassment, but sexual harassment to the point that she feared for her safety. Was it because you had to get her out of the company immediately? What are you talking about? I know you're the worst kind of power-hungry, abusive creep. But even for someone playing the role of an uncontrollable tyrant, what you did to Mary was clearly over the line. For someone as calculating as you, it was obviously too much. But if I make one assumption, everything suddenly makes perfect sense. I have no idea what you're babbling about. You found out, didn't you, that Mary had reported this contract to the internal whistleblower hotline? I don't know if you've planted a spy in that office or if you personally monitor every report that comes through. But either way, you realized someone inside the company was looking into that contract. That's how you tracked down who might have gotten their hands on those documents and started investigating everyone who could have raised suspicion. Since only you, your inner circle, and a few people at A Academy knew about the deal, narrowing it down wouldn't have been difficult. And eventually, you realized that Mary, who had recently been working at the academy as a special instructor, also had access to that information. What a vivid imagination. Maybe you should try writing novels instead. Forget calling it ordinary. What's truly mediocre is your way of thinking. Even after shutting down the internal report, you panicked at the thought that Mary might go to an outside agency. So you took the crudest route imaginable, something even a child wouldn't do. You pushed her to the brink, broke her down, and tried to force her out of the company. You probably figured that if she did go public later, you could just dismiss her as a mentally unstable woman who suddenly quit her job. Sure, Mary was shaken at first, just like you planned, but unfortunately for you, she's not that fragile. Once she regains her footing, she'll come to the same conclusion I did. And when she does, she'll expose all of this to the world. That won't be allowed. What's so wrong with that contract anyway? All it shows is that I secured tablets for the academy at a cheaper price. That's all. The specs on the contract and the actual delivered products don't match at all. That alone is a huge problem. A new voice cut in unexpectedly. Startled, Harris stood up and turned toward the door where Miles was now standing. Who the hell are you? Who said you could? Ryan and I used to work together in sales. Some of our former coworkers have moved to different companies. One of them happens to work at the supplier who handled those tablets. When I explained the situation, he dug through old records and found evidence of tampering. What? The world's smaller than you think. It turns out those tablets were originally ordered as new models, but then got quietly swapped for old, unsold stock. The price should have dropped, but instead, you padded the value with junk apps and sold them at the original price. And those apps? Worthless. You only used them to cover the price difference. Then, behind the scenes, the supplier issued quiet rebates, and the extra money? Well, that's probably lining a few pockets. You didn't just pocket the difference on the tablets. This deal was part of a subsidized educational program, meaning government money was involved. I bet A Academy agreed to the deal on the condition that they'd receive those subsidies. This isn't just about B Techno. Chairman Davis and others at the Academy deserve to be investigated too. You dare betray Mr. Davis after everything he's done for you? You ungrateful lunatic. You and Mr. Davis are the real traitors here. Those tablets were paid for by parents wanting to educate their children, and the subsidies? That money came from taxpayers. It was meant to support the next generation, not to line your damn pockets. That issue is definitely serious, Miles said, but actually, we've got another matter to address as well. Hey, everyone, now's the time. As he called out toward the hallway, about 10 women came pouring into the room all at once. What the hell? All of you. They're from the secretarial department, Miles said. When I mentioned I was coming to raise a serious issue with Mr. Harris, they said they had things they wanted to say too, so I figured why not handle it all at once. Miles was playing dumb, but I knew better. He'd been working behind the scenes for a while, now coordinating with the secretaries and waiting for the right moment to strike. When I told him I was going to confront Mr. Harris about what Mary went through, he said, "Then I'll go with you," and contacted the entire department. The secretaries knew that just voicing their complaints wouldn't be enough. Mr. Harris had no conscience. So they had waited for the moment he showed weakness. We've had enough. We're reporting Mr. Harris for power harassment and sexual harassment externally. Several people who tried to speak out before were forced out by extreme harassment. Some even suffered mental breakdowns. We've already consulted a lawyer about all of it. A few cases are going to be pursued as criminal charges. And didn't you do something awful to Mary just today after she was transferred here? We've had enough. Even if it means we all get fired, we're going public with everything you've done. The secretary's fury was overwhelming, and for the first time, Mr. Harris, who had always kept everyone under his thumb, started to back down. Meanwhile, Miles had been recording everything on his phone and sending the footage out to multiple contacts within the company. There was no way the employees who had silently endured Harris's tyranny for so long would ignore it now. The hallway outside the president's office quickly erupted with overlapping voices. "I've got something to say too," and "I want to join the whistleblowers," as employees flooded into the room in a surge of outrage. At first, I had been standing face to face with Mr. Harris, but the overwhelming energy of the incoming staff pushed me aside, and I gradually found myself edged out to the side. The employees' long-suppressed anger was overwhelming, and even as Mr. Harris, cornered against the wall, shouted, "I won't forgive any of you. Get out right now." His voice was completely drowned out by the far louder chorus of furious cries from the crowd. The heat inside the room became so intense that even Miles and I, who had led the charge in starting the confrontation, couldn't take it anymore and ended up crawling our way out. Out in the hallway, Miles and I exchanged glances and tried to look back into the president's office, but by then the crowd had spilled all the way into the corridor. completely blocking our view. We couldn't even catch a glimpse of Mr. Harris. The chaos escalated to the point that the police had to step in to bring the situation under control. With the officer's intervention, the employees finally began to calm down, and Mr. Harris was able to escape the crush of bodies that had kept him pinned against the wall for quite some time. He now looked completely spent, barely able to breathe. His suit was a mess, his hair disheveled, and as he was helped out by two officers, it seemed for a moment that he turned his eyes toward Miles and me. But there was no longer any trace of the domineering contempt he had shown before. His eyes were vacant, unfocused. Whether he even recognized me or Miles was impossible to tell. And so, the tablet contract fraud I had exposed and all of Mr. Harris's power harassment and sexual misconduct were brought into the light. His inner circle, along with Chairman Davis and others at A Academy who were involved in the wrongdoing, were all criminally charged and stripped of their positions. Later, Miles told me something surprising. Apparently, during my high school years, Mr. Harris's son had been in the same grade as me. I hadn't noticed at all. Harris isn't an uncommon surname, and I hadn't made the connection until now. His son had been fairly bright and attended an expensive prep school, but he had never once outscored me on a test. While he could accept losing to other students at the same prep school, being beaten repeatedly by someone like me who hadn't even attended cram school was something he reportedly never got over. I had been completely unaware of this at the time. Even now, when I looked at our old yearbook, I could barely recall his face, maybe vaguely familiar at best. But it seemed that his jealousy toward me had been passed on to his father, Mr. Harris. Even Harris couldn't have openly lashed out at me back then, when I was just a student. But when I later became a teacher at A Academy, it gave him the opportunity he'd been waiting for, a chance to avenge his son's wounded pride. When I married Mary, who was working at his company, and he learned that she had discovered his fraud, Mr. Harris decided to eliminate her. He thought that if he could humiliate Mary and force her out, it would both protect his secret and provoke me into retaliation, creating a scandal big enough to get me fired as a teacher too. Mr. Harris had apparently come up with what he thought was a brilliant two birds with one stone plan, protecting himself while taking revenge on me, but he completely failed to realize just how many enemies he had made. In the end, the fire he had started came back around and burned him instead, and the only words that came to mind were, "He got exactly what he deserved." After Mr. Harris was removed, B Techno seemed to become a much healthier workplace, and Mary, having recovered from the shock, returned to the head office with renewed energy and a strong drive to take on her new responsibilities. At A Academy, the scandal involving Mr. Davis and B Techno had triggered a near-total turnover of the school's leadership. Because the incident drew widespread public attention, for a while afterward, tabloid reporters lingered around the school, and I found myself constantly running around trying to prevent them from approaching the students. I felt genuinely sorry for having caused the students unnecessary distress. Still, if that corrupt system of backdoor deals had been left intact, future students would have continued to be exploited. In that sense, exposing it was something that had to happen sooner or later. As the turmoil gradually settled down, I had an unexpected reunion. The person who took over as chairman after Mr. Davis resigned was none other than my former teacher and mentor, Mr. Yates. He had been teaching at a different high school until recently, so I was truly surprised by the encounter. As it turned out, Mr. Yates had lost his wife some years ago and had since remarried. His new wife's family happened to include a prominent figure in the education world, and in light of the recent scandal at A Academy, it was decided that a truly trustworthy person was needed to lead the school. That's how Mr. Yates was chosen. This influential figure had come to know Mr. Yates personally through family ties, and, recognizing his sincerity, had apparently persuaded him quite insistently to take on the role of chairman. I turned the position down more than once, saying it was far too important for someone like me. But they kept insisting that only someone without personal ambition could be trusted in a time like this. Their reasoning didn't always make sense to me, but in the end, I agreed if I could help bring some stability back to the students, it was worth it. Knowing that one of my former students, Ryan, was here definitely gave me the final push. I trust you completely, Mr. Yates. You're the only one who can rebuild this academy after everything it's been through. If there's anything I can do to help, just say the word, I'll do whatever it takes. I knew you'd say that. I don't know how long I'll be in this position, but for now, I plan to give it everything I've got for the students. And I expect you to do the same. Mr. Yates, and I shook hands firmly. I'm determined to dedicate my life to making this academy a bright place, one that opens the door to every student's future.